Okay, so it's 7 o'clock and I'm going to call the meeting of, it's August 18th, I believe. Am I right? Meeting of the Development Review Board to order. I'm Maya Hasagawa and I'm going to chair this meeting. I am going to ask that people who are not members of the board who are on Zoom to please mute yourselves until two things happen. One, you're called to testify, and two, you are asked to take the oath. And people at the municipal center, I hope you can see everything. And when it's time to take the oath, I will ask you guys to stand also, okay? So people online will unmute and people who are at the municipal building will stand. Okay. I am going to read the chair's remarks to start the meeting. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. In the event our decision is appealed to the environmental court, the court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at the evidence from our hearing, the regulations, and determine if the evidence supports the decision of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this proceeding may appeal a decision made by the board. So I strongly encourage all of you to speak up at this hearing. As we are on the record, we are going to ask that you affirm that your testimony will be truthful. So people at the municipal building, please stand. And anybody who is not a member of the board who is online, please unmute yourself. I know there's several other people. I saw some other people who are not members of the board online. Tom Moskowitz, Mark Westa, please unmute yourselves. Okay, I'm going to repeat the oath. I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury. Please say I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you very much. You can mute yourselves and people at the municipal building can sit down. Applicants require a majority of the full board to succeed. That is 4 votes out of 7. We have 6 members of the board present at the current moment. Sorry, somebody just did a chat. If we did not have a full board present to hear your application, then we will consider a request to continue your application to the next public meeting. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the hearing. While we may vote on an application, it is the written decision that controls the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town does not have a special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, town attorney, or other town departments will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant and other interested parties. And can I ask BCTV to please take away the highlight, the person that's in the big square so I can see the entire board?
Maya,
Yeah,
if you click on view in the top corner of the screen and go to gallery instead of speaker.
yeah, I didn't know whether that would work when they did a highlight. Do you think it'll work? I don't know.
That's what I have it on. I have it on gallery view and
Well, I had it on gallery too, and then they highlighted me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too, but I went back to gallery and it worked.
Yeah, that's what I did
Okay.
too.
Okay, it works. I wasn't sure. Okay, Gary, I'm going to appoint you to hear all the applications for tonight. Okay, as the alternate.
Okay.
Now, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 21st?
A motion that we approve the minutes for July 21st, 2021.
I will second that motion.
Okay. All members of the board in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
that's 6-0. Thank you. Brian or Steve, has the meeting been properly warned? Did they hear me?
Like what? Yeah,
Brian,
went properly.
it was properly warned. Thank you. Does anybody have conflicts of interest or has had ex parte communications and wants to recuse themselves from any of the items on the agenda? Michael,
I would like to recuse myself from the first two on the agenda.
okay, that's 2021-87 and 2021-131.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else have any? Okay. So the first case on the agenda is 2021-87. Paul Belogour for Vermont Re Development LLC. Appeal of a zoning administrator's determination that a ground sign cannot be resurfaced as it is non-conforming for height, lighting, and area and is non-grandfathered. This sign is at 580 Canal Street. And this was continued from July 21st, 2021. Is there anybody here to present this case?
Paul Belogour will present the case. So, which one is it?
Given that there's a full board isn't present, we usually give the option that they continue it until a board is complete.
Yes, we only have, with Michael recusing himself, we only have 5 members. So if you want to continue it for another month and wait and see if we get a full board, that's your prerogative.
So to actually win the appeal, you would need 4 positive votes, which is the majority of the board. So you'd have to get 4 out of the 5 present tonight.
Okay, I'll go with that.
So you'll
I understand,
continue.
yeah.
Okay.
My name is Paul Belogour, and I am the chairman of the Vermont Re Development LLC. In September of it says 2020, but I think it was 2019, purchased 580 Canal Street, and the property came with the sign that apparently was installed in the 90s. We did a change of design in regards of upgrading, actually updating the new name for the property. And apparently that became an issue with the town of Brattleboro. So we would like the town to allow us to keep the original structure that was erected in the 1990s for the sign, and keep the new sign that is currently being questioned.
Questions from the board?
I have a question. Did you move the sign?
No,
No, I drove by there the other day, Nora. It's the same place it was.
That it's lower than it was, isn't it?
no, it's the same height. The sign was, if you actually look at the sign, it has, I better explain, 2 legs and then the square at the top. And inside of that square, there used to be a sign for Outlet Mall. So the only thing we did, we removed that old sign, which would say Outlet Mall, and replaced with the Vermont Marketplace. That's the only thing that we did to the sign. And painted a rusty metal structure into black.
So Maya,
Okay,
should I
but-
enter the town's argument, or do you folks have further questions for Mr. Belogour?
No, I was going to ask you to comment, Brian.
Okay, yeah, so the old signs have been grandfathered. They no longer comply with the 2015 zoning. Grandfathering continues unless a property changes ownership, which has happened, and the primary content of the sign is also changed. And that happened when it went from the outlets to Vermont Marketplace. So the 2 events that trigger coming into conformance have taken place, and there's no flexibility in the code so that the sign now has to come to the dimensional standards in effect. So the current sign is too large, too tall, and it's internally lit. So all those things need to be brought into conformance. The only possible flexibility is the site is a construction site. There's more flexibility for construction signs. It might be reasonable for the board to allow the sign to be maintained until the site construction is completed, at which point they can install a conforming sign.
Members of the board have any other questions?
So I do have a question. I noticed that the zoning across the street is industrial. And would this sign be allowed if it was across the street? If the property was across the street from where it is?
Yes, it would.
I guess the question I wanted to ask, how, I mean, you said you would be in compliance once the completion of the outlet is done. Is there a deadline, I guess, in that sense?
I would suggest that you give them a year. It's my understanding that they're considering petitioning the planning commission to amend the sign code to allow for an appropriate common scheme premises sign, along with a number of other property owners. If you gave them a year, that might give them some time to resolve that issue before having to get a new sign.
So Catherine Turnus has joined us, and so
Sorry, guys,
now
for being
have-
late. Sorry for being late. A friend of mine's father passed away, and I was just taking care of a situation.
that's fine. So we now have 6 members of the board that can vote on Michael, Catherine. Michael is recusing himself from the first two items on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and everybody else on the board is here. I've appointed Gary to hear everything, all the cases, as the alternate.
Oh, okay. You already got to number 87 already? You've done that one?
No, we're just talking about the sign.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it's been suggested that we could allow the sign to remain for up to a year, as it is currently, and allow potential changes to the zoning code. Because it, as Nora pointed out, across the street, the sign would be legal.
Unfortunately, we do not own land across the street. What
No,
we have is
you
what we
don't.
have.
But that's, we're just discussing the vagaries, I guess, of the zoning code. And
Yes.
whether or not
Yeah.
it makes any sense. So,
So according to what I got in the packet, essentially we're reversing Brian's opinion, or
we would be reversing Brian, yeah,
okay.
No,
in
that's not
that
what
we
I'm
would
saying.
allow the sign to remain. The memo we got from the staff suggests 6 months. We're suggesting a year, or until the construction is completed.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
so Maya, I'm not suggesting that you overturn my findings. I'm suggesting that you uphold my findings because it's a non-conforming sign, and given the regulations, it needs to
That's-
be brought into conformance. But I'm suggesting that you give them a year before they have to remove the non-conforming sign.
So, sorry, you're right, I misspoke.
Right.
So I guess one last question to like Columbo. Was this included with the original plan about the signage? Was that in there about the size? So this type of dissenting would have been addressed earlier before we came to this, Brian?
They didn't put in an application for the sign, and as I had said, they didn't think an application was necessary because they were refacing the existing sign.
Oh.
Hmm.
So how would you word, Brian, so we could add another 6 months onto what was offered? Is that essentially it, or just leave it at 6 months?
I would suggest 6 months, a year, or until the construction is completed, whichever comes first.
Substantially completed.
Can we ask for a year? Because I think construction will be completed in less than 12 months. If it doesn't make much of a difference, we would like to spend the next 12 months to see if we can amend the signage law of the Town of Brattleboro. I do believe signs do help travelers that exit at exit 1 to better locate businesses. It's conducive and helpful for the local businesses to be easily found by people who are new to the area. The gas station is visible, everything else is not. And it only will help local businesses to have better signage.
So you're asking for a year without
For a
the
year,
condition of until the construction
Yeah,
is completed?
we would like to expedite completion of the site. The winter's coming, so we'll do whatever it takes to make sure the second item on the agenda gets completed as fast as possible.
I second that request. Administratively, a straight 12-year limit is the easiest to enforce.
Okay. Nora, were you going to say something?
I would recommend that instead of working on the sign, they work on the zoning.
I think that's what he's planning to do. Is
He
is that
said
not
on the
reasonable?
sign law.
Oh, no,
He
I'm
said on
sorry,
the
I
sign
meant to say on the
zone.
zoning.
I think the zoning for that property is not right.
So were you, Mr. Belogour, were you thinking about
Well,
looking at the zoning itself or looking at the regulations for the sign?
can I consult with my attorney in regards to that? Because I have no idea what it entails to change zoning, and how would change of zoning affect the business? I mean, currently it's zoned as a retail business. So if I change the zone to industrial, then I have no idea what it means in the town of Brattleboro. I'm not prepared to answer that question right now. I mean, I would like to do whatever it takes to keep the sign, but I just don't know. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
Okay. Nora?
That's fine.
Okay, so we whatever you're going to do, you have a year.
Thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate
So we
it.
have to rule on it, Maya.
Yeah, I know, but I want the motion to be that you would have a year.
Okay, so somebody make a motion.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I make the motion that the Vermont Redevelopment LLC Center District appeal. They're allowed to have a year before to keep the sign that they have.
That the appeal is upheld and they keep the sign
If
for
the
a year.
appeal is upheld, then they can keep the sign that they have now for a year.
Is there a second?
A second.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote, make it easier for Brian to know. Nora,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
Maya, aye. So it's 6-0 that you can keep the sign for a year.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 2021-131, Vermont Re Development LLC. Request for a site plan approval to construct a new north paved parking area, improve site access, landscaping, lighting, and general site improvements at 580 Canal Street. who is going to present?
No.
Brian, you have anything to?
Nope.
Then I guess I'll start right in.
No, you should tell us about your project, about the project and what your plans are, and we will ask you questions.
Yes, ma'am. As it states in the agenda, Vermont Re Development LLC is requesting a site plan approval to construct a new north parking lot, improve site access, improve landscaping and lighting, and other general site improvements. I think the best way to start is with a snapshot of what I'm going to call the existing site in context with its surroundings. And if Brian or someone could bring up that first slide. Steve, thank you. Next. Yep. I also have boards if you run into trouble, Steve. Next slide, if you can. There we are. So north is up. I-91 is on the left of the screen. I think you can pretty much see the 580 Canal Street boundaries, the existing building, and be aware this is a snapshot post recent architectural, aesthetic, and accessibility improvements that are ongoing. I'm going to kind of dissect the site improvements into four areas. The north gravel lot, the northerly appendage to the north of the mall, what I'm calling the north drive parking and service area immediately to the north side of the mall, what I fondly call the western front, the area between the front of 580 Canal Street and Canal Street, and then the south parking lot. Paul Belogour is proposing to increase parking to meet the town's parking regulations, minimum parking space regulations. Currently, it's hard to know, but based on faded delineation lines, there are approximately 116 to 120 spaces on site. Town zoning for commercial uses, based on the size of this building, requires 155 spaces. Paul is proposing to provide approximately 190 spaces. Let's see. The north gravel lot will be converted to, let me get my cheat sheet, will be converted to a 77 space parking lot with landscape improvements, lighting improvements, screening, fence screening along the north and east boundaries that abut a residential use, and will also incorporate a bio retention facility. If you go to the next slide, Steve, we can begin to see the improvements. So you can see the lot as it is configured, maintaining connectivity to the Burger King, which is an existing access between the gravel lot and Burger King's parking lot. The bioretention facility practice is in what I'll call the median, the strip between the double bays of parking. And that's a pretty good synopsis of that. Along the north side, North Drive parking and service. Improvements are to include finessing that north entrance, curb cut, to protect the existing utility pole a little bit better, and just make it as gracious as we can as it abuts Circle K. Pedestrian circulation improvements are also proposed. Improvements to the loading dock area, and immediately adjacent to that, a new trash and recycling bin enclosure. One thing of particular note that we are proposing along that side is, if you remember the previous slide, asphalt goes right up to the north side of that building. We're proposing to move that asphalt away from the building, still accommodate some parking, about 19 spaces along that north side, for handicap accessible spaces, and a few miscellaneous spaces. This affords us the opportunity to put in a really nice sidewalk along the north side of the building, connecting all of the north entrances into the building. It also provides us with some turf to provide some building landscaping up against the building. Along the western front, that little precious strip between 580 Canal and Canal Street, we're proposing to eliminate the center curb cut, which is, I don't even know how wide it is. It's unbelievably wide. But to completely eliminate it, eliminate the access drive and parking that is there now, and replace that with some streetscape, some building frontage landscaping, and some new walkways that connect out to the Canal Street sidewalk, and I'll mention something about that in a second. A paralleling walkway to connect the north and south sides of the building and parking lots, and access to 2 handicap ramps that allow folks, customers, clients, to enter the building at the northwest corner and southwest corner. The other thing that we're proposing is to provide, because that edge of the street is in shambles, is to provide a new 5-foot wide sidewalk with curb, which will run the entire length between the north entrance and the south parking lot entrance. And then the south parking lot, it may not look like we have done a lot. We've tried to work within the constraints of the existing configuration of parking. It's a pretty tricky little piece of turf. Mr. Belogour was hoping that we could maintain as much of the parking as we could, while at the same time providing better pedestrian circulation, safety, and also providing appropriate landscape and lighting. And 2 things of note with the improvements to the south parking lot, where we've incorporated landscaped islands for parking shading. We've done the same thing as we did on the north side of the building. We have eliminated the parking that is currently, or was recently up against the south facade. We've pulled it away far enough to provide another gracious sidewalk between Canal Street and then running along parallel the south facade, connecting all of the entrances in the new deck at the southeast corner. And then, as I mentioned, the landscaped islands, I think, are a really wonderful addition to a parking lot that currently is, I guess, best described as an asphalt desert. We're also going to modify the south entrance into the parking lot a bit. Again, there's a utility pole that we want to provide a little bit more space between it and the entrance lane. And we also want to narrow it because currently it's at a dimension that is way more than is necessary. And with that, I'll stop and take any questions.
I'd like to talk about the south parking lot for
Yes,
a
ma'am.
minute. I'm looking at the drawing that was provided to us. And you put in, there's going to be a kind of a center island, right?
Yes.
And, but along the southern edge there, where the, you have a long line of parking spaces that are not broken up at all.
That is correct. We should discuss it. Obviously, living in New England, snow country, plowing is an issue, moving snow around. And Paul and his staff have requested that you consider allowing us not to break up that parking to allow plowing to be easier. Certainly, islands of appropriate dimension, I think your minimum is 8 feet, could be inserted if the board so desires to see that strip of parking broken up into smaller pieces.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions? Dan?
Yes, hi. I understand that the drainage system in the parking lots are probably, the south lot at least, is probably conforms to the requirements of being next to I-91. Would any of those requirements affect the north lot?
The north lot currently does drain to the Vermont right-of-way. There's a pipe that runs, I think it's 15-inch diameter pipe that runs under the building near the loading dock in the northeast corner. There's a manhole which picks up a couple of existing catch basins that are out in that gravel lot and then takes the water from those catch basins from that gravel lot under the building, under the south parking lot to the existing swale along the exit, the route, the exit 1 exit ramp.
So it's one connected system going underneath the building?
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
Then Dan, the new north parking area is also going to have a bioswale. And in a separate communication, the engineer stated that it will exceed the capacity required by the state stormwater standards. So it will more than meet the local town standards as well.
Great.
Right.
Thanks.
That median is serving multiple functions. It's breaking up that 77 car parking lot into bite-sized pieces. It's providing opportunities to provide shade for the parking lot. And then it's also been sized and detailed to accommodate stormwater, retain it, treat it, and then as per the state regulations, stormwater regulations, and then let it outflow to the existing catch basin under the building and out to the state of Vermont right of way.
Just as a follow-up, has there been any updates to the, did you say it was a 15-inch main going underneath the building? And does that need to be addressed, or, does it need to be, it's the right size and it doesn't need to be improved in any way?
It is the right size, and Dan Sisto is here, who might be able to speak to its condition.
Hi, my name's Dan Sisto. We had the 15-inch concrete culvert cambered and inspected, and it was of sound use. There was no cracks in it, there was no bulges, nothing shaling on the inside of the culvert, and we had the green light to continue with it.
And to
Great,
follow,
thanks.
and to follow up on Dan's comments, we are working with the state of Vermont, with Brian McAvoy, to because the invert out at the end of that pipe under the parking lot, that swale needs some remedial work, and Jeff Goodrich in our office and Brian have been in communication, have talked, and it appears that we're going to be able to modify, remediate the existing swale to continue to accommodate 580 Canal Street drainage.
Other members of the board have any questions?
I have another quick one, if you don't mind.
Okay.
You mentioned you're going to maintain the pass-through behind Burger King. I suppose you've, is that correct, first of all?
Well, we're one of the things that is clear in the neighborhood center district language is that connectivity between properties internally is encouraged. There is a paved, and maybe Paul or Dan can speak to it more specifically, but there is currently an existing paved little piece of driveway between the Burger King parking lot into that gravel lot. And at this point, we are showing that to remain.
Right. So the reason I'm asking is, how do you envision that being a permanent thing, or do you see that will eventually, I understand what you're saying, but is that going to be a problem for traffic flow or anything like that, given that you'd have, was it 77 cars back there?
Right.
Well, we definitely want to.
In other words, would it need to be widened, or would it need to be managed, with Burger King or something like that?
Our intention to keep it permanent. As for the traffic, would it impede?
I don't think so. I think it would be, it'll provide a convenient way to, if you're at the mall and you want to go to Burger King, it'll be a convenient way to stay off of Canal Street and visit Burger King, or vice versa. I think it's a rather nice, convenient back door for motorists, and I think currently I have it dimensioned at 20 feet. So two-way, 10-foot lanes.
Right. One reason I asked, by the way, is that I know in the past anyway, that gravel lot has been used by 18-wheelers, and they use it as a turnaround or whatever. And I don't know how you're anticipating that, that could affect, I'm sure the dimensions are fine for that kind of thing still, but with all the cars, it might be a little tighter. Those are my reason for asking.
Well, I can't speak to the history of 18-wheelers using that. I am assuming that with the improvements, 18-wheeler drivers are going to be less prone to want to use that as a turnaround. And we have provided adequate turning maneuvers for the new loading dock at the northeast corner of the building. One can come in on the north drive with a large truck, turn up the travel lane on the east side of the parking lot, and then back into the dock. Trash and recycling trucks can do exactly the same maneuver. And then there's adequate turning maneuver for both large trucks leaving the loading dock or the trash and recycling enclosure to simply leave by taking a left-hand turn and heading right out the north drive.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I just got one last question. I guess it's somewhat, in correlation to what Dan was mentioning about parking. I'm looking in the paper, I'm just trying to see as far as ADA accessibility, people getting across, and where you have doorways for people getting in and out of ramps or anything like that set up. I'm just trying to look on the paperwork here to see where that's located and where that's at.
I can walk you through that rather quickly if you want.
That would be great.
Okay, on the south side, there's a main door, which is pretty much centered on the south facade. I wish I had a pointer. But anyway, there's a main door, which is handicap accessible. It's at grade. There's a curb ramp, which allows one with mobility issues, constraints, to be able to come down off of the sidewalk, cross the travelway to handicap parking spaces, which I think are 4 directly across from that main entrance. So that's handicap parking, ADA parking on the south side, and one of the south accessible doorways. The other accessible doorway on the south side is at the southwest corner of the building. I don't know if you've been by recently, but there's a new little pavilion with an entry stair and an integral handicap ramp. The ramp is on the west side of the building, which will allow one to access that corner retail space, commercial space, directly into that unit. Let's see. On the north side, there are also 2 accessible doorways, what I'll call the main north door, which is, if you see the bump out, which is the toilet rooms. On the north side, immediately to the west of that is a covered entrance, where we're also providing a bike rack on the north side. That too is at grade and easily accessible. Not easily accessible, it is accessible from the sidewalk, and the proximate ADA parking spaces that are directly in front of that door. There are 2. And then if you go down to the northwest corner, it's a mirror image of the southwest corner, an entrance pavilion with steps up and a ramp along the west side to allow one to leave their ADA compliant space in front of that southwest end of the building and circumnavigate along the sidewalks to that ramp and in. So there are four, to the best of my knowledge, currently there are four handicap accessible entrances into the building.
And those are maintained by the building management, if I'm not mistaken, as far as having that, cleared, cleaned. Because I know I came by where Irving gas station is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, on that side, I know there's an entrance in. I don't know if that's one of your doorways for ADA. That is a good accessible place also for ADA parking, but also for bike racks as well too, because there's a lot of bikers. So I don't know if you have any of those set up.
We do at both the north and south main entrances. There's a bike rack proposed on the east side of the south entrance, and then under the covered way at the main north entrance. So bike racks are being provided on both the north and south side. And guys, if I missed any,
all right, I was trying to get, it's kind of not that clear from here. If I can get maybe.
You got Canal Street.
Yep.
So how many electric vehicle charging stations that you have?
I worked with Sue Fillion, and we discussed that. The way the regs read, for the first 40 parking spaces, one, for every additional every 20 parking spaces, another one. And we have provided for the proposed 190 spaces, we have provided 7, which I think, if you do the math, is, I think it's 6 and change, so we rounded it up to 7. Right now, we're showing them in the new north parking lot. There is some discussion with folks at Vermont Re Development LLC to possibly move them to the south parking lot and for better visibility, because the EV charging vendors like to have their charging units readily apparent to motorists and clientele of the retail space. But the short answer is we have shown 7 EV charging stations.
Yep.
Now, are you associated with V-Train where the buses, like any mini buses, be able to go up there, medical rides as well also? Because if I'm not mistaken, BMH said that one of their, I guess, PT is going to be going up there as well also. So they're going to be having one of their offices up there from BMH for physical therapy. If I'm not mistaken, one of their offices will be in the back of, as part of a plan down there. I don't know if that's on there also, because it was spoken about at their meeting up at BMH. Has that also been talked about with you as well?
I'll let Paul speak to the hospital and
this is
clinic.
Paul Belogour.
Hi, Paul.
I think we addressed all concerns that the hospital had in relation to parking and traffic.
Right.
Yeah, I don't believe in fact, if you actually look at that portion where we eliminating parking and putting green, that was requested by the hospital in front of the Canal Street.
Right.
I think a lot of things that we did to the site improvement were asked by the hospital. So I think we addressed all the issues.
Oh, okay, because a lot of that would be trained with people with disabilities with the ramps and stuff, and when they have to get in and out of those minibuses, need a way, I guess, to get up in certain areas, have to have a certain width, because a lot of them have those little mini scooters.
The hospital side will have
Yeah.
actually two entrances. In fact, where their practice will be located, it's probably the most comfortable area for handicap accessibility. So I do believe they probably looked at it.
And is that going to be in the back as well? Or, because I know there's a restaurant, I was just looking at the map of how
That's
you
on
had
the northern
this
side.
layout.
That's on the side, that's on the northern side of,
Okay.
Northern Canal Street.
right.
We have provided a total of 16 ADA compliant spaces. I don't have the breakdown. Anyway, five of the spaces are van accessible, which I think is actually, which I think I may have missed one. I think all four spaces in the south parking lot, immediately across from the main entrance, are van accessible spaces. So they're 8-foot parking spaces, an 8-foot accessible aisle, and then an 8-foot space straddling the other side of the aisle. On the north side, adjacent to the south, the northwest corner of the building, where the PT clinic is looking to populate some space. There are 2 van accessible parking spaces and 2 car accessible spaces. And then further up, or further to the east, in front of the north main door, there are 2 more car accessible spaces. So we exceed the ADA requirements considerably. And if it proves to be a need for more, the parking along the north drive head-in parking could be restriped to accommodate additional van accessible spaces. But I think
That's great. That's good.
I think we provide.
I think one of my concerns, and I think this is what Gary was trying to get at, is that a lot of PT people come in a van that's driven by Vermont Mover or by Holton Home, and I know this because I've been spending a lot of time up at the hospital with physical therapy recently, and they will drop off. They won't park. They will just drop people off and pick them up. And I think if I got Gary's initial question, he wanted to know if there was enough room for the van to drop people off and then to get into an accessible entrance. Is that
Right.
your question?
Right,
So they
because the way they elevate out.
Yeah, they wouldn't be coming in that front entrance because they would be dropped off by a van. They would be coming in either the south entrance, main entrance, or the main entrance on the north.
Well, certainly on either side. I mean, we have not shown a designated van pull-off for those kinds of drop-offs and pickups of people visiting PT. But I think in our world today, I think a van can pull up along the driveway on either side, the south side or the north side, put on its flashers and drop folks off, a person or people off at an accessible route into the building.
Right, because for me personally, I take med rides, and they have big minivans, very big minivans, or buses or cars. And a lot of the big minivans come with patients in very large wheelchairs. And there has to be a certain space and lift for them to access, and that area has to be cleared out, just like up at the hospital. I don't know if you've seen how that's set up. When the minibuses come and drop off and there's a ramp for it, it's a lot of elderly and people with that. I don't know if you got with the hospital and looked at their schematics, how they're set up. They given it to you or sat down with you and shown you how this has to be set up with PT, because a lot of people are coming out of operations, injuries, and it's very painful for some people coming in and out of these places, and they have to be very cautious because that can also fall into place with some type of injury if it's not cleared the area constantly, because it has to be de-iced or whatever and cleared. So I don't know how you set up or sat down with Brattleboro Memorial Hospital to figure out how they're set up for that area is going to be for people for physical therapy.
Yeah, you're talking about the area in front of the Richards building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just something that I think somebody should have a conversation about if the physical therapy department or some of it is moving to this building.
We will address that with the hospital.
I beg your pardon, I didn't hear you.
This is Paul. Yes, we will speak to the hospital one more time in regards of that issue.
Okay, fair enough. Does anybody else on the board have any other concerns? Nora, you have anything? I have one, which is the south parking lot and the number of consecutive spaces.
Yes.
And I know that you're going to put plantings in the island in the center, that little key-shaped thing. But along the south edge, there is that, I don't know how many spaces in a row there are there.
They're around 30.
39.
39. Oh, 39. Thank you.
39. And then there's 18 along the other side.
On the east side.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd like to see those broken up. I don't know how the rest of the board is going to feel, but I would like to make that as a condition. And we'll vote on that.
What's the question?
I understand, Dan Sisto, I understand that sort of concern, but we've also lived in New England all my life, and 4 to 5 months out of the year, we have a significant, or can have a significant amount of snow. And then we get into, just like the hospital does and other businesses, they mound it 5 miles high, and then we all have to disperse it everywhere, right? And now we're dumping over banks, we're taking garbage that we could then clean up in the parking lot, because people do litter, unfortunately, but then we dump it over a bank, and then we got to try to figure out how to clean it up, and it ends up in the waterway. We just got to keep that in mind. If we live south, great, we could break it up a little bit, but we also have to keep in mind snow depths and where do we put it and what do we do with it. So, I mean, it's a significant improvement of what it was and has been. So if you could just keep that in mind, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I guess that being said also, would that be a problem too with parking? Because if there's snow, and I've been living here quite a while, I'm on Canal Street and I've seen snow miles probably as high as the telephone pole. What would happen then? Where would you be putting this snow? And would that be an issue for parking as well too?
If we didn't have islands in those areas, we could then push it back far enough to try to minimize the loss of spaces. When you add islands, you then take away that any sort of forgiveness in the space.
Sort of like the way Price Chopper puts their snow and all that, and Hannaford.
Well,
Right, and then they have to remove it every other, Price Chopper, Market 32 every storm. And it only takes
Right.
4 inches, and they have mountains in there.
I understand that, but I just have to say that both Price Chopper and Mark and Hannaford and Aldi will probably, if they ever redo their parking lot, will have to meet the same regulations. And we'll have to put in more islands and break up the parking. I believe I'm correct about that. Am I not, Brian?
Yes. And if they repave.
Yeah. So the regulation,
I have a question to Maya.
Maya, I just wanted to add that I'm in support of the conditions to add the islands. I'd also be concerned about setting a precedent by not requiring that stipulation be met, because there's a lot more parking lots in town.
yes. Catherine?
I guess I'm trying to understand what you want them to do, to get rid of the islands or have less parking spaces along the islands?
No. Along the south and east sides where they have
Okay,
those very long row of parking spaces to break them up.
Which in the photograph is, I'm sorry, south side, the bottom or the top?
The bottom.
Okay. Oh, thank
And
you.
on
I
the
needed the
east-
arrow.
And on the east, they have these very long rows of parking. And
Okay.
I believe, I'm trying to find the reg, which I can't lay my hands on right now.
10 spaces, Maya.
It's 10 spaces
Yep.
per
So
row.
I'm going to say on the 39 and the 18, I would want to see the islands. I think we can do without on the one that's 13 and the one on the other side that's 11.
Yeah.
Right, because then it becomes a parking issue. Then people are going to have to find other places like Irving or Burger King, and there's going to be an overflow
Right.
of parking.
Right.
They're kind of almost doubling the parking here from
Right.
what it used to be. I'm thinking, I hope it gets this kind of business that they need to
Oh, yeah.
find more parking.
But with 39 spaces, if they put in, we're talking about
3.
2 islands?
Three
or
islands.
3 islands, 3 islands, taking away 3 parking spaces on the 39, and on the east side, putting in 1 island, 2, my math is not very good.
It would be 1 island to break that up
One.
into bays of parking of 10 or less. My concern is, as a landscape architect, is always that a lot of those islands in concept are wonderful. It provides an opportunity to plant another tree, to provide more shading of parking lot. The problem is the trees get absolutely, from the day they're planted through their lifespan, they get used and abused. So I think as long as I have a client that's willing to plant them properly in islands properly dimensioned, then I have a hard time arguing with you. Other than I'm a 66-year-old native New Hampshire resident, and I know snow plowing can be around islands can be a real pain in the neck, and snow plows cause a lot of damage to curbs and trees and other plants, but that's part of the reality of where I think some of our landscape ordinances, regulations in this part of the country don't quite jibe with, I think, our climate. But it is explicit in your ordinance, in your landscape ordinance, that parking be broken up into bays of 10 or less.
Dan?
Yeah, just to get at the sort of the dimensions of this parking lot, and I, for lack of a better visual aid, this is sort of the shape. It's like a wedge shape, right?
It's
You
yes.
have, if you were to do, multiple islands along the outside edges, are we also saying that then that calls into question the middle island, and does that provide the latitude for them to alter the entire plan? Because it seems like there's a fairly sizable island right now in the middle.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So would we be requiring them to keep the middle island as well as these smaller islands that break up the rows of parking?
There would be no reason to eliminate the center island. Dimensionally, breaking up the 39 spaces into smaller bays would not impact dimensionally travel widths or that center island from coexisting quite nicely.
But it would not require any change to the island then in the middle.
I think that's what he just said.
Right. Well, it seems like your argument with the snow, let's say, being pushed south, possibly over the bank or whatever, just as a, sort of a function of pushing the snow inward and then south out of those bays, I don't know, but it seems to me that it might be necessary or a better plan to eliminate the center island to accommodate your concern about pushing the snow to the south.
The center island is actually necessary to define the travel lanes, and it's also required to meet the minimum landscaping. If they were to make that level of change, they would have to come back to the board with the revised site plan.
So is that a square footage requirement, or I'm not sure, is it a number of trees or a number of square feet of green space?
So it's a percentage. You have to have 50% of the area of the parking lot shaded by trees. And there's a specific area assigned to large trees or medium trees to make that calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Is the board ready to vote, or?
Maya, could I add a couple other conditions?
Sure.
So the access is onto a state highway. So VTrans needs to approve the changes to the access points. And at this point, they haven't been able to complete that. So I would like it if you would authorize me to administratively approve minor changes to that to meet VTrans standards.
Okay.
And then similar, they mentioned that they might want to relocate the EV chargers to be more visible, which is something vendors desire. So I'd ask that if you would allow me to administratively review and change those locations if they request it.
I would also say that we should, any changes to the landscaping plan can be approved by the administrator.
Sounds good.
Does that work for you, Brian?
Yep, that sounds great.
This is Alan. I haven't had a chance yet, but I just really want to acknowledge, I don't know how long we've been chatting, Brian, Sue and I, but it's over a year. And I just can't thank them enough for their patience and their input and their accommodation insight. I mean, I just want to acknowledge them and my appreciation for their efforts in front of the board. Thank you, Brian.
This has really been a great project, and it's really exciting to see you folks doing this.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the slide before this, no, Mr.
I
Belogour
will
is
say that is one of the worst parking lots I've ever been in.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Mr. Belogour
I
is doing some
agree.
good stuff.
Okay, can I have, anybody else on the board have anything they want to add or any conditions they want to add? Okay, can somebody please make a motion that we will make the following additional conditions? That the south parking lot, I don't know how to say this, the south parking in the south parking lot and the east parking in the south parking lot will be broken up into groups of approximately 10. Because they're an uneven number, I'll say approximately, that the administrator can approve any changes that are necessary to the access to the parking lots if any changes are necessary after VTrans approval. That the administrator can approve any changes in the EV charger placement. And that any landscaping changes can be administratively approved. Did I miss anything?
You got it.
Okay, can somebody make a motion, please?
I so move in motion that we move forward. What you
Is there a
proposed.
second? Is there a second?
Second.
Nora,
Second.
you seconded? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Are we ready to vote? It's been moved and seconded. Do I need to read the conditions again? No, everybody's got them, right?
Nope.
Okay. Nora,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
Okay, so with the additional conditions, the project is approved. I'm voting aye. Sorry, I forgot to vote. The project is approved. 6-0. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Paul Belogour. I just want to thank the board and the town of Brattleboro for helping me with the project. Appreciate it.
Good luck to you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Can't wait till it opens.
Lots of friends that like to visit.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, should we take, it's 8:19. We have 2 additional items on the agenda. Should we take a 5-minute break? Or do you want to keep going?
5 minutes would be good.
Yeah, I
Okay,
could do with a cup of tea.
all right. We will be back at 8:25.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll call us back to order. We will now hear 2021-16. Steve Horton for the Town of Brattleboro Waterfront District Site Plan and Riparian Area Conditional Use Approval to extend a parking lot over a previously developed brownfield cap at 21 Depot Street. This is the parking lot behind the new proposed Amtrak station, if I'm correct.
Behind it.
Hi,
Behind it.
hi, Maya. Yes,
Hi. Who is going to present? Steve, Mark?
Maya. We're going to ask Mark Wester from Stevens Associates to present the plan to you all, and then we'll both be
Okay.
available for questions.
Okay, sounds fine.
Thank you.
All yours, Mark.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark West. I'm a landscape architect from Stevens and Associates. As you said, this relates to the Amtrak, the new passenger platform that they're constructing, but it is a separate project. So I'll try to clarify that and make sure everybody kind of understands that. Basically, we're looking to add some additional parking down along the Depot Street area. So probably be best if I just share my screen and give you some graphics to help everybody understand. Can you all see that?
Yep.
All right, so the bridge is over on the left and Bridge Street is on the left. Depot Street is coming across your page. North is to the left. And here are the existing rail lines. And basically the platform that Amtrak is talking about adding is sort of in this zone here. So it'll be taking up some of the parking area that exists. And then our new parking that we're looking at building for the town kind of takes up this area. So I'll switch to a plan. Hopefully everybody can kind of make the jump from that, aerial image to this. The red building is kind of indicating the archery building. And then down to the bottom is the railroad track. So it's more or less the same scale that we were just looking at. Again, the Amtrak platform that they're looking at is kind of going in this area. So this is the existing conditions. I'm sure you've all been there. There's parking along the tracks, and then there's kind of the turnaround loop at the end of the parking lot as you head towards the oil company. Oops, go back to this one. If I look at the plan, so these are the plans that were provided to you. I've just added a little color to help clarify. This pink here is where the new platform is. So it's taking up a chunk of the parking lot. Amtrak will be providing some accessible parking spaces down here at the end. And that's really, quite a bit of the rationale for this platform. It'll provide accessible access to the train. What the town is looking to do is the work down here in the gray area, which is kind of in the area of the loop. You can kind of see it lately, the existing loop that is there now underneath this image, and then the archery building over here on the left. So it's kind of taking up that area. It's providing kind of a parking lot you can drive around. There'll be a single loaded kind of bay through this zone, and then parking along the back edge and at either edge. It is over a brownfield site, so that has limited quite a bit of the ability to do things like plantings, like with the last discussion, the trees. But we are breaking up the parking lot into smaller increments, and we are trying to provide some reasonable planting along the edge. We're showing 3 charging stations over here on the left. And stormwater, the idea with stormwater is that it's being pitched in this direction, then collecting in sort of a stone swale along the edge that'll then allow it to, kind of migrate back to the land over at this edge. So that's really the kind of quick overview. Happy to zoom in more or answer questions or get into it more.
Remind me, how many parking spaces?
Altogether, I believe we're adding 27. There is a little bit of room to add a few more here. right in this zone, but we've shown that as being striped to allow the mover bus to kind of circulate through here. You know, because of the closing of the bridge in the future, there's some question about whether the mover will always continue to go down this far, but we want to provide that, you know, especially with the, you know, kind of accessible Amtrak facilities. So that's kind of the way that's designed right now.
So how many spots did the Amtrak station take up?
So I believe they lost 9, but they are also adding, so kind of the spaces along this edge are being, you know, modified a bit. If I go back to the aerial, you can see that there was kind of, well, this is an older aerial, so this is built out now. So actually, yeah, this is an old aerial. So I believe they're losing 9 spots because of the platform.
So, and 9, and you're adding how many, did you say?
27.
27.
Good.
So, this is Catherine. I guess I'm a little confused. Does that mean that you have to relocate that house?
This the building here, the archery building,
Yes.
that building will be removed. It is a brownfield site. It contains hazardous materials.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that will be removed.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure. I thought for a minute I thought of it as a home as opposed to a building.
Right.
I don't think it's used for anything right now, is it?
No, it's not. And the limits of the green space that, you know, you kind of think is this area across from the Whetstone, you know, Station Brewery. For the most part, that will remain intact as is. We're just kind of touching the edge of that.
So what kind of lighting are you planning for those areas, basically?
So there's a series of kind of, you know, them slightly historic kind of lighting along the edge of the Amtrak rail right now. So we'd probably be looking to just sort of match that. There are a few details like that because of the, I don't know, because of the progress Amtrak's made and the progress we've made, we want to coordinate with them to make this look as much as one kind of coherent project as we can. So we'll probably, you know, talk to them more about exactly what they're doing and if they have any lighting and kind of match that. But we'll definitely meet the town standards for cutoff fixtures and, you know, kind of dark sky compliant lighting.
So the people, I guess pretty much the way the lightings are set up now, sunrise, sunset, they come on, go off.
Yeah.
Not too bright, because I know people across the bridge would complain about too brightness and be a certain.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as far as, I guess, planting anything in that area, are you, well, we already said that the ground is no good.
Right. We can't do plants that, you know, need deep roots or, you know, are substantially rooted, I guess. So we are showing, you know, some kind of smaller plants, some daylilies, some sort of kind of butterfly wildflower garden type plantings, but those will be, you know, sort of small in scale.
Is that going to be like container planting?
No, they'll just be in the first kind of foot of the ground. So we can plant, they just can't go kind of down into the cap, the hazardous materials.
And is that elevation wise, is this all level with the existing parking lot?
It is more or less where we will be doing a little bit of cutting. To manage the stormwater, we looked at a series of options, and one was doing things with catch basins and piping through the middle of the project, but that obviously would have required quite a bit of earth disturbance and disturbance of hazardous materials. So we're sheet flowing the water along the edge, kind of towards that dark band at the top, to the east. And to do that, we will need to do a little bit of cutting of soil material, but we have talked with a qualified environmental, you know, professional about that, and we've worked through that whole process, and it's a good solution, and price-wise, it's a good solution.
Now, with this being a capped situation, are you going to need to do a stormwater permit for it, per se?
We don't believe that we need to do one, but it is possible. Part of the issue, again, is the kind of coordination with Amtrak. They are handling stormwater one way, we are handling it a different way, and we'll just kind of need to cross our T's and dot our I's to finish this up. But right now it is very much a paved surface with the roof and the existing pavement and the cap, and so we're not really adding impervious surface very much to this area.
So what additions, I guess, handicap parking would be in that lot? How many, would it be extra parking for handicap?
So there are the two that Amtrak is putting in, and those are, we're kind of letting them take the lead on that because that's appropriate for their facility.
Mm-hmm.
We are not showing any, but we certainly could, but there's no like direct place that people from our parking lot would go other than to the board. The close kind of would be the board at Amtrak, and we're going to allow Amtrak to kind of deal with what they think that number should be.
This is Catherine again. If I recall, originally that little roundabout, that little turnaround thing was put in a long while back, because I was on the DRB when it was done, was for the buses to be able to turn around.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a covered space for people to sit to wait for the bus, so they won't have to be out in the weather if it's raining or snowing? Because that would be really nice, especially if you're dealing with people who may be sitting there waiting for somebody coming in on the train.
Right. We're not planning that in our own facility, but this, the Amtrak platform is a covered facility. So we're assuming that people will stay, if it's bad weather, they'll be able to stay in that platform.
Yeah, but I'm talking about people who take the bus. They may get off the bus. They may get off the bus at the top, and
well, our thinking is that people that are coming to use the bus and the train are going to be getting on and off in this area near the bus.
Well, okay, I've done it, and I'm trying to disagree, because I think you need to have something for people to be able to sit and wait for the bus.
Catherine, can I just ask a question? Where would they be going if they went around the roundabout? There's nothing there.
There's no exit out to the street again?
Yeah.
How are they getting in there?
The bus is going to come and it's going to stop and let people on and off, and then it needs to turn around. So this is just allowing it to turn and then leave.
Hey, Mark, could I just interject here too?
Yeah.
We had conversations with the mover, and I know those folks very well. And this isn't actually a bus stop, as you just said. It's just a place for them to turn around. This parking lot that we're proposing is not a bus stop for them.
Nora?
Nope, I'm good.
So, I can't remember when we talked to Amtrak. I believe they had a provision for a bike rack. Does anybody remember? And are there any plans to put one in the parking lot in case people who are going to the Whetstone or whatever ride their bicycles?
The Whetstone has a bike rack.
And
Yeah.
I do believe Amtrak has one. I don't have, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I saw in their plans that they had a bike rack.
Yeah, I think I have a recollection that they had a bike rack.
Yeah.
I actually have their plans. I'll dig those up real quick.
Okay.
I guess like the question of a bike rack might come in if, and when is this parking lot going to maybe service river access, that sort of thing?
Well, I think certainly the hope is that this would be used for people to park and then, you know, walk on the bridge when it's a pedestrian bridge or bike across it and things like that, yeah.
So if they want to stop and have a beer after they walk across the bridge, they can move their bike over to the over to the whetstone bike rack. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would picture people taking their bikes off the car and riding and then, you know, either returning to the car and putting it back on or stopping at some place like the whetstone and using that bike rack.
I haven't found
Anybody
it.
in-
Madam Chair, can I offer a comment?
Were you sworn in?
I was.
Okay. Go
It's-
please identify yourself and where you live, and then you can go ahead and comment.
Yes, ma'am. I am Patrick Moreland. I'm the town's assistant town manager, and I live in the town of Marlboro. Just trying to save Steve Horton a little time. I am very well aware that Amtrak's plan is to provide a covered bicycle parking piece of infrastructure. It's actually a really nice piece, and it's going to be immediately adjacent to their new depot building here. So it'll be essentially in what looks to be the very first parking space adjacent to the building, be a nice covered bicycle parking installation.
That's what I remembered. Thank you. There any other comments or questions from anybody on the board? Does anybody have any conditions they want to impose?
Maya,
Yes.
I think just to grant Brian administrative approval to review the lighting fixtures on the site.
Okay.
I have a comment that I find that the plan is looks very nice and was easily understood, and I appreciate you you folks putting the effort into that.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
It's all Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the site plan and the riparian setback with the
Motion that
condition,
we so move.
with the, wait a minute,
Oh,
Gary.
sorry.
With the condition that Brian, as the administrator, has to approve the lighting.
I
Is
have
that what you
motion.
said? Steve, was that, I mean, John, was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Ready?
all right, Gary.
Okay.
Come on, Gary.
I motion that we so move to go forward.
Is there a second?
I second. Catherine seconds.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call the roll again. Nora,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Did you say aye?
Yes, aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
And I'm voting aye, so that is 7-0. And the project is approved with the condition that Brian has to approve the lighting.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Thanks for your presentation. It was very good.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Good night.
Did I?
Good night. Okay. Let me just shuffle some papers around. We are now going to discuss 2021-130 Paul Tokmakian, request for conditional use approval of an accessory use at the inn on Putney Road to hold events of no more than 40 persons with off-site parking at 192 Putney Road. And before we get started, just let me say that most of the board did a site visit. And what we saw were 2 levels of yard. And there was some, there is a buffer on the left, but we should, this between the inn and the next house. And that's probably something that we should talk about. We should probably talk about parking and noise. Nora, do you have anything else? That you saw?
No, not that I saw there. I have other questions, but yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody else on the board that was at the site visit have anything you want to add to the description? It for Dan and Catherine, it backs up onto the onto a path that's kind of goes above the retreat. And the yards are both have lawn and they're planted.
Okay.
I
I
guess
don't know
just
if that
parking
helps
was
you
my only issue, question, basically, yeah. And how that was gonna be handled.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about your project? Paul?
Sure. The project it's to ask for a permit to hold events at our inn of no more than 40 people. All of the we would follow all of the Brattleboro noise regulations in terms of time and decibel level. We don't want to be a bad neighbor at all to either one of our any of our neighbors, so we would definitely always keep them in the loop in terms of when we're holding events and so forth. There'd be no more than 40 people attending the events. The events would also not extend beyond a 10 o'clock deadline in the evening. As for parking, the guest is ultimately responsible for assuring that parking does not disturb the neighborhood, but I will provide the service of contacting the church, which is across the street, to ask their permission if the guests, if they need it, if the guests can park in that parking lot. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I guess it depends on the size of the event. If it was a very small event, I mean, I don't find it to be a problem for parking on the street, but anything larger than, say, 5 additional guests or something like that, I would ask that they find parking beyond, somewhere other than on the street in the neighborhood. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I guess, what's the capacity, Paul, of parking They're 40?
No, not at the end, there is not 40 parking spaces here.
No, 40, I thought you meant how many people? It's 40 people
Right.
max.
Right, because me coming in alone, just trying to get out when I maneuvered in, and I wasn't drinking. It's a hassle. So I just that alone, and the proper lighting for people to get in and out to there. Would that be, I mean, because if you're gonna have catering and a band and all that, they're gonna need parking.
Yeah,
and all that.
it would be understood that they would not be allowed to, like, if there's a catering van, et cetera, they would need to find some place to keep their catering van other than at the inn for the duration of the event. If they needed to, they could perhaps they could use the church parking lot to store the van for the duration of the event, but they wouldn't be allowed to keep their large vans at the inn. I don't want to disturb, the guests. One of the things about a large event that happens here, any kind of large event, such as a wedding, that's going to be catered, et cetera, the guests are required to book the entire inn for that period. So being that the guests are here at the inn, it's their cars, and it's their cars that are being inconvenienced by any van or anything like that. So I'm not quite as worried about that. Additional vehicles that would come for people who are attending the event, as I said, more than 5 or 3 additional vehicles, I would request that those cars, we make other arrangements, whether it's them shuttling people from a remote location, say they have a residence here in Brattleboro, say I don't know, whatever, an in-laws or a cousin's house or something here in Brattleboro or whatever, that they work out a shuttling scenario, or I try to arrange with the church to get parking for them there.
Mike, and only why I say that because the crosswalk is a little further up from the church. It's not right there directly across from where you're at. I'm just thinking safety.
It might be 1 block. It's at the corner of where the church is and Putney Road.
Right,
it's not that far.
Right, because I live right across the street from the Aztec restaurant. Then when people leave out of the restaurant and my landlord allowed parking in our lot, you're going to have lingerers and all that. And I'm thinking of the people across the street. And if anything continues over there across the street with the neighbors on the other side, it may not be the ones on that side, but it might be people in that lot, just taking those things into consideration. Because like I said, it's just about a safety issue. We know how Putney Road is.
Yeah.
At night. And that's a very small drive. And trying to get out, I have to look forward to look to where I'm getting out. And if you've had a few drinks, it's
Well, I certainly hope that's not the case with people drinking.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to go to the site visit. I wish I could see what it looked like. We don't have anything as far as a photo or anything of it, do we?
I did submit a diagram to the planning department.
Yeah, there is a diagram.
Oh, I don't have it
Doesn't
on
really-
the package.
You didn't get a diagram in your packet?
No, I didn't. All I got was a memorandum for this one.
There was a diagram attached.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Other questions from the board?
Well, Paul had this one last thing, Paul, like Columbo.
Yep.
That idea about shuttling is not a bad idea. There is areas that they can park and somebody can carpool or whatever, if that's an issue. But that's a good idea. I like that because that happens with a lot of when people get shuttled in to an event such as that. Like I said, it's just the size of getting into that driveway. Like I said, with the hedges, it's very hard to get out. Cause like I said, I have to lean forward literally just to see if traffic is coming either way. And there's no mirrors to see what's coming and stuff. So, yeah, that's probably my only issue. But if they're part, walk up to the church, 'cause like I said, the crosswalk is up that way towards the common.
Yeah,
If I'm not mistaken, and they would have to walk up, cross over, and then go down from there.
that's true.
No, Dan, you had questions.
Yeah, I'd just like us to address and consider some of the issues that, and by the way, I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it to the site visit also, but I did read over the letter written by one of the abutters. And I guess to get into a couple of the concerns, there's the obvious sort of neighbor concerns, and I'm sure you've communicated, Paul, with the neighbors about some of their concerns. One of them that from a town perspective that comes up is that the previous owner had changed the name and potentially the usage to the idea of it being an inn versus a bed and breakfast. I actually don't know if that's really a material concern. Can anyone address that? Is that
I believe the regs changed at some point, and the inn and B&B became synonymous. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, in one classification, in this, and then there are specific standards for inns, and there are specific standards for bed and breakfast. And this particular setup meets the standards for inns.
so? In addition to the number of people who can attend an event or something like that, are there essentially connotations that go along with that name change, like the time that people can arrive, or is there really a sort of is there actually a material difference? It seems to be a difference of concern to one of the neighbors, at least. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so for a B&B, you have to have an owner, property owner as a manager.
Okay.
You can
On
have
site.
a site manager who's not the property owner for an inn, although in this case it is the property owner. With inns, you can also have some rooms in the accessory structure, where with a B&B, all the rooms are in the main house. And then with inns, you can also request accessory uses as a conditional use, like events, which is what they're doing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, what was it originally approved as way back when it was approved? Was it approved as a bed and breakfast?
Yeah, it was. And, that same, the approved number of rooms, how they were organized, how it was run, really falls under our definition of an inn. But yes, it was originally approved for a B&B, which was a conditional use under the old regulations.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, and just speaking to the neighbors' questions or comments, Dan, I guess that's what I noticed on that, was saying, if you have a house and your neighbors approved to be a bed and breakfast, and then all of a sudden they're an inn now. I mean, I don't know in this particular case whether it makes all that much of a difference, because a bed and breakfast would still have the capability to apply for events.
Weddings. Sure. I would think so too. Mm-hmm.
Now, the one question that I would like to ask Brian, as I read the regulations, I come up with before 10 o'clock a 55 decibel limit for this, and then after 10 o'clock it goes down to a 45 decibel limit. And that is not even at their house, it's at the property line is the way I read the regulations.
Yes.
And from what I could see, a lot of the, the little gazebo and such was, pretty much tucked right up into the corner of the property, right next to what would be the property line, I'm assuming. Is that correct, Paul?
What gazebo are you talking about?
You had pointed out by a gazebo where they had their radio set up and were playing playing some music there and doing karaoke.
Right. So that was at sort of the deck area, and that is at the property line, but it's at the rear south. What would it be? The southwest corner of the property, at the rear of the property.
Okay, but it's right on the property line.
It is on the property line.
Okay, and as I read the rules, that's 55 decibels at the property line. It's not. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, I think it's at the receiving property, but yeah, it would be at the property line.
All right, and
I believe that was the discussion we had about the last time about the pump station.
well, that's what.
And
Well, that's why I looked at it again, because if you look at page 3-65 in the and 322A, it says background sound levels beyond the property line must not interfere with the reasonable. I mean, it sounds to me the way that is stated is they're talking about 55 decibels at the property line. That's the way I would interpret that writing. And that being said, I did a little bit of research as far as what before 10 o'clock, 55 decibels is synonymous with an electric toothbrush, a coffee percolator, and a household refrigerator are examples of 55 decibels. So it's, I guess I would be a little concerned about the noise coming from a party that might regularly get up over that level.
So if you could explain what does the regulation say about holding events in the city? Like when I'm here in my at the inn here, and they have a concert down on the common, I can hear that concert at my house.
Oh yeah,
relatively easily. What's the regulation that is regulating the noise from that concert that the Parks and Rec has?
Well, I don't think it's zoned residential there.
It's right next to it's right next to the person's house whose letter you have. And it's right across the street from apartments.
All I'm trying to do is follow the rules here.
Sure.
You are in the residential zoned area.
Okay, and it's not residential up there.
I don't know. All I know is that's what you are.
I see. Brian, can you answer that question?
It's not something I researched, so no, I wouldn't answer that question.
Okay.
We don't know what the decibel resonates. I remember when I was there, I remember you mentioning too, Brian, about how the fountain drowns out the noise from the traffic out there, but yet I still heard the traffic alongside of that. So acoustically, how is that set up where that noise will stay within that particular area without it, interfering with the neighbors. That's the whole thing. Because like when you were mentioning the other places downtown, I mean, like even with the Whetstone and other places, they're set up down there, I guess, with that particular acoustic setting. Where when you're in the open, it's a whole different resonating.
Or
It's out there.
is there a difference between like sort of regular use for a space as opposed to occasional use in terms of the amount of noise that can be generated?
It's my understanding that you can, you would probably have to get a variance of one sort or another for something like that. This is the way I read it. But
We generally don't do variances. We would do a waiver possibly.
okay, waiver, mine.
Yeah. But Nora, you had some questions, I know.
I do actually have a lot of questions. Paul, can you tell us how you decided on 40 people as an appropriate number?
It felt like a right size for the property in terms of a max, in terms of a limit. I don't feel like the property, it would be a good use of the property or the area, the amount of impact in the area would be fair to have it be more than that. And that was just sort of a guess, I suppose.
Now, I heard you before, I think, and let me clarify, that any event that would be at that property would be with people who are actually staying at your B&B or inn. Is that correct? I mean, you're not going to just open it up to, or you're not envisioning just opening up to anybody to rent your lovely gardens and space.
I have had inquiries of people using the space. And I would like to be able to have events here at the inn, such as, I don't know, sort of maybe acoustic music or something like that in the afternoon, a presentation or something like that at the inn. Which those would be for the benefit of people here, but it wouldn't be an event done by the guests who are here. Those events I'm imagining as being much smaller, not catered, not having a tent, etc., being much more sort of a casual kind of event, not going on for maybe an hour or something like that, not say 6 hours. Events that are larger, that are catered, that have like substantial amounts of equipment coming in, those would be guest generated events of whatever, like say, I don't know, it could be a memorial for somebody perhaps, or more, and most likely I'm looking at weddings for that kind of thing.
So do you have an idea of how often these events might be?
In terms of how I'm booking that, well, how much inquiry and how often people are looking to book, I can't imagine it being more than once a month during sort of the period between May and October. In terms of a wedding, I'm talking about wedding events, that kind of larger events. I can't imagine it being more than that. And they always would need to be booked far in advance, because otherwise, right now I book up, my weekends are completely booked between now and the end of October. So, I mean, I'm not looking at any events happening any more this year.
So with weddings and such, do you envision live music and dancing and dance floors and that sort of thing? Amplified music?
I'm not really envisioning that, and I guess it depends on what time of day it would be. I'm not sure if that makes a difference in terms of decibel level. I know 10 o'clock or after 10 o'clock, I know that, but you know, I could see it if it was an afternoon, something that was going from noon until 6 or something like that, and they were going to have some live music or something in the afternoon. I could see maybe requesting, wanting to have the ability to perhaps do do amplified music at that point. But I'm not seeing them being really very rowdy parties or something like that. That's just not the kind of thing that I want. I am very sensitive to what's going on with my neighbors and how this affects them, because they're both friends of mine. So I don't want to be disturbing of that situation. I don't want there to be any kind of bad blood between me and my neighbors at all.
I guess one question, Paul, and this is my final Jeopardy question. What is the maximum minimum capacity? Do you know off the top of your head that you're allowed to entertain in that particular space? Because I just listened to what Nora says when you said 40. I said, is there a certain amount that you've already predicted, or do you have it written up in your contract or something like that? Or is that something with the fire marshal or whoever? I mean, something happens, you have to get these people out.
I haven't investigated that in terms of what the maximum would be in terms of the space that's available and the amount of and the number of egresses there are on the property. I would imagine that 40 is far below what the limit would be in terms of the outdoor space, just because you've got egress on both sides. You've got a lot of, people can, if there's some sort of emergency or whatever,
right,
they can flee easily 3 sides of the yard, and they can go out the front also. They're blocked by the house, but there is a lot of ability to vacate the property if that was an issue.
Right. I would something I would look into, because a lot of places and even parties, and even would have to have some way of accessing this if something like that does occur. It's a safety issue. I think even in your part, insurance wise and otherwise, I think maybe that'll be something you might want to investigate, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. Who would I investigate that with? Do you know?
Brian? Would that be with the Brattleboro Fire Department, or?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would say the fire department.
So I don't know I'm a relatively new resident here in Brattleboro, and I don't know how long many of you have been on the planning board. But I know that the inn has been used for weddings in the past. And I'm not sure what this, when that stipulation faded or whatever, but the inn has been used previously. Do any of you have any historical knowledge of that?
I would think it'd be in the archives or somewhere, wherever the original plan.
Well,
Brian, do you have any idea?
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't either.
Whether they did things with a permit or permission or with proper zoning, we don't know what they did.
Okay.
So,
So I have a couple questions. Nora, I'm sorry, Nora, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
You talk about having events that are not driven by guests at the inn.
Uh-huh.
But the only bathroom facilities you have are inside the inn.
That's correct. But
So if you have a concert and you have 40 people or 50 people attending, where are they going to use the facilities?
there's a restroom on the first floor of the inn, which is available for general use.
Is it handicapped accessible?
It is not handicapped accessible.
Is it, do you have I assume you'd be working to update your state wastewater permit to include the number of people that you'd have using the facilities?
I don't have any knowledge about that.
Just
This is the kind of stuff we need to know to have this go forward. Maya, I'm going to say I'm not prepared to vote on this right now because I would like to see a more definite plan and with kind of more, it's a, to me, if you are planning to have events that are unrelated to your business that has a conditional use as an inn, I think that's a different requirement than what you're asking for here, or what this application looks like.
I see.
I mean, to me, that's like some other kind of home business. That's not, it's like entertainment or something like that, but it's not use as an inn.
Right.
So I'd like to have more definition around what it is you're planning to do or you want to do.
Right. And I don't know if this addresses, I know what you're saying and I can see the point. I don't know if it's germane to what you're saying, but the events that I would see, like saying hosting a music event of some kind, I would not be using that. There would be no, I wouldn't be using it to generate money. There wouldn't be any, there wouldn't be a ticketed event or something like that. It would be exclusively a way to provide sort of a service to musicians and to the musical community here in Brattleboro. It wouldn't be to like generate, although I can see that it does benefit my business as a promotional item.
Well, that's just a party. You know,
you're right. It is really just kind of a kind of party. You're right. But does that, am I able to have just kind of a party here? Can I have multiple?
Are you going to advertise it? Will it be advertising? Will it be, you're not going to ticket, but are you going to open it to the public? How are people going to find out about it? I mean, these are all kinds of questions that I think we want to know.
Sure.
The other thing that I really want to know is, I think before we approve anything, we have to see something in writing, an agreement between you and St. Michael's.
Okay.
That you can use their parking lot on occasion or for parking the catering van or for overflow parking. Because if you have an event, where are people going to park? Are they going to park along Bradley? Are they going to, because that was really difficult, parking along Bradley.
Yeah.
I had to go all the way down to north to find a place to park.
So I think that Nora's right. I'm gonna let John John, do you want to say anything? Any comments?
If I could just jump in, there is a member of the public, and
That's what I was just gonna ask.
did you want to offer any testimony, or are you just observing?
I'm the abutting neighbor to the south, and I submitted letters, which I think you already received. So if you read them, that was my statement. I don't know if I need to read it again, but I'm willing to because I have copies. My concern is basically the noise, because it really affects, and actually all the points I made about a lot of unknown people coming into the backyards of a residential neighborhood. Is that a safety issue? That has come up before. But again, I've lived at that property for a long time.
Excuse me, but can this person please identify herself and where she lives?
Yes, I'm the abutting neighbor to the south of the bed and breakfast, which, as I said, and my name is Inder Khalsa, and I wrote a letter that I was supposed to submit that I believe you got a copy of. If you didn't read it, I'll read my letter again. But I'm
No,
very...
I think we got your letter.
Okay, great. This is very new for the property. There have not been that many many weddings or loud events for a long time there. And when there were, back in the 1990s, or, we were told, and it came up before in front of the Development Review Board, we were told that it was a bed and breakfast, and the conditions that the bed and breakfast were formed, the original conditions, everybody seemed to have a copy of them on the board, and they said, well, it's not in your definition to have events like this. It's a zoned residential neighborhood. So I was just trying to outline in my letter how it affected me. And I'm at this meeting just to learn more about it, basically. So was there any other questions I had? Yes, I have one. If you grant this variance to this business, and it's the only business among this neighborhood stretch, I believe, does that continue to the next owner and the next owner after that? And because when that happens, as it's happened before, things seems to mushroom. The bed and breakfast now, I'm sure provides major taxes, and people come in with expectations as to what they can do there based on how things were listed when they bought it, or their understanding of what that facility could do, which I'm not sure are really truthful. There haven't been a great number of events that were, and I certainly don't have objections to musical events in the afternoon, or when that's happened with Paul and Judith, they haven't been obtrusive. But when there's a loud wedding with a sound system, as a very close neighbor, it's a major issue. It's very disruptive. So
Thank you very much. Thank you. So how do you want to proceed? I tend to agree with Nora that I don't think things have been completely thought out. So Brian, do we continue it, or do we afternoon musical events are kind of different from a wedding. Do we have Paul submit another application?
I think you
It's
should
more
outline
clear.
additional information that you need and then continue it for a month.
Right. I would like to see at least a better plan.
Is there, can we get some sort of a sound study at the property line for what sounds likely to be coming out of a wedding?
Well, that would be a little difficult to do considering depending upon the type of music that the wedding would want to play. I mean, I doubt if they're going to be doing Metallica. You know, I'm just saying,
They might be.
But like I said, they just had, he was talking about the one that they had before, they were doing karaoke. I mean, that's.
Yeah, but that's.
I don't know, it's very difficult to say, oh, well, that's 55
Not even
decibels at the
music.
property line, you know, or 45. It would be interesting to have something at the property line and see how little, how quiet it had to be.
Well, obviously, the abutters could hear it. Right?
They had mentioned something about the music and the screaming. I thought I read in the letter.
Yes. Yeah, it says, startled by the music and the sound of many people talking close to the backyard. I'm assuming she meant her backyard. And notice the tents and the catering truck. The music volume and other noise, including occasional screams, increased through the evening until the music finally ended about 10 and the group noise gradually faded. So.
Which is legal.
What?
Which is exactly the time frame, 10 o'clock, and they stopped the music and.
Yeah, but was it more than 55 decibels?
That's my concern.
At 10 o'clock, it has to go down to 45.
And 45.
Right, but this was only one incident that this person was referring to, or many?
Well, this was the wedding that took place on August 7th, which was before we heard this. We heard anything about this.
It seems like the owner probably needs to think through the responsibilities of controlling the noise for the various events.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'd like to see more on the noise and a parking agreement and kind of more definite plans on who you intend to have these events for, so that we can say one or the other, you know.
So.
No,
So it sounds, I mean, does it help? What is it better if it's two different permits, one for the weddings and one for the other events? One for my parties?
Well, it might be two different kinds of applications. Yes, one that's related to your inn, which is, you know, kind of an extension of your conditional permit now. And if you're going to do some sort of entertainment that's not directly related to your inn, that's a different kind of business.
Nora, can I also add with the capacity that you were talking about, just to get an idea, also added to that, what is the ratio capacity of people for safety reasons?
Safety and or facilities, yeah.
That way you have an idea too, because when you mentioned about exits and bathrooms, like Nora said, that's another issue too, that kind of raises a few antennas.
If an emergency vehicle had to get in there during an event, a rescue vehicle. Somebody had a heart attack.
Uh-huh.
I think you need to think that through and probably discuss it with the fire department, because they would be the ones sending a rescue truck.
Another thought here, and I don't know whether this makes a difference in the memorandum that was sent out under the parking standards that he put there. It was talking about proposed accessory use request 40 additional guests. And I guess that would be one of my questions to go along with Gary is, are we talking about 40 guests over and above the people that are in the inn, or are we talking about a total of 40 people?
It would be a total 40. It would be a total of 40 people at the event.
That would be good if we could make sure that was clarified as well.
Maya, can the staff clarify a point?
Sure.
So in regards to the questions about emergency vehicle access, we have provided the application as seen by the board to the Brattleboro Fire Department twice, and they did not feel the need to comment. I asked for an explicit statement of that, and the Len Howard has on the record said he does not need to comment. So I would not recommend additional conditions of approval based on hypothetical concerns about the fire department.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Do you think Len would put that in writing for us?
I can make his email available to you, yes.
Okay. All right, so far we have the noise issue. And I don't know how we resolve that. The parking agreement, more detailed plans for events. How, if you have events outside of weddings where you require the folks that are getting married or their families or whoever to stay at the inn, how are they going to be advertised? Who's going to be invited?
Oh, no, you cannot restrict who's going to be invited. You can't do that. You can't regulate.
Catherine, how are people going to be notified about the event? Is it going to be published in the Commons? Is it going to be?
Yes, but that's different than regulating who can stay there.
I don't think she was saying that, Catherine.
Oh, well, that's what I was getting.
No, that's not what I meant at all. I meant, how will he decide how are people going to know about the event? And how is he going to restrict the size, the number of people who attend? I mean, if he advertises it in the Reformer, let's say, or the Commons, puts it in the calendar in the Commons, and 70 people show up, how is that going to be handled? And that gets to Michael's question about the wastewater. I mean, they're all going to use one bathroom. I mean, I think you need to think this through a little bit. Okay, that's all we're saying. Okay, Paul?
Yes, thank you very much. I agree.
Unless you're going to supply porta potties or something like that, Paul.
That's a possibility. I mean, I suppose if it was for a larger group. Yep.
You could put lovely flowers around it.
Okay, so we want more information. Michael, do you have any ideas, or does anybody have any ideas about this noise issue?
That's got sound meters that, I don't know, does the town have any of that equipment? Brian, do you know?
You can just download an app on your phone.
I think any future approval needs to include the requirement that decibel levels are not exceeded. And if the neighbors record it and file a complaint, then there'll be action.
It's kind of, I don't know. I feel that it's kind of on us to not approve something that we know is not going to work.
Well, without the data, we won't know if it works or not.
Well, then we should get some data. All right.
So now Michael, who would you call? That saying Ghostbusters, but who would you call to sit there and measure decibel levels in the town?
Well, you could play music, is it like you played at the wedding, and
It's like Nora said, there's different.
And the abutters can measure the sound level.
Right, there's different acoustics and different levels in different areas. So how do you determine which is appropriate?
It's the abutters that are having major issue.
I think the applicant should be responsible for supplying that information. It's not up to the abutters.
Well, say, Michael,
I'm just saying it should be measured at the abutters
property line.
Right, if you're doing it on the gazebo or the porch that he has in the back versus the other area of the flower garden, as we know, different levels and different sounds are going to reverberate in different ways. So how do you determine which one is the accurate one from which area? So he might decide to have a party on that side of the building. Oh, that's too high. How do you determine? It's going to be continually at the gazebo.
Well, then he could figure out where he needed to have his music set up so he didn't, and what kind of volume it could be at, so that he didn't break the regulations.
Wouldn't it be a guest who decides how they want the setup?
No,
they would have to follow my rules.
So you would have to say, okay, I want it held only in this area of the band. That's it.
Right, exactly. I mean, I can impose that kind of rules on my guests and about the people who are using.
Oh, okay, because I know most weddings, they like to have the bride come and say, oh, I would love it over here or something.
Right, well.
Okay, can we?
One more comment, Maya.
Yeah.
I'd want to consider who does that sound study. I think there's a difference between somebody with an app and a third-party acoustic consultant.
I can't do an acoustic consultant. I think you're asking for something that's. I mean, I could if I was a live music producer or something like that who I was holding these events like on a regular basis, I could understand that, and I understand your concern for loud music. I don't want to be doing that to my neighbors for sure. And I'm going to do everything I can, but to say that for this permit to be passed, that I have to get a sound consultant out here to do a sound study, I think is a burdensome regulation you're putting upon me.
Well, I think an awful lot of these regulations are there for just to be common sense and to be good neighbors.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that if nothing else, I would think you would want to educate yourself as to what 55 decibels is at a property line coming from a boombox or whatever. Just, what kind of volume is there? I mean, I think you can use an app on your cell phone to say, this is what the decibels are right here.
Nora.
So a lot of this, Paul, is not kind of for you. It's for whoever might have the property after you. It's like you have all these good intentions and good ideas, and we would agree to them the way that you're telling us, but without something more definite, when the property passes on, these things could pass on as well. So we have to kind of think about what happens next.
Right.
Not just what happens with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like when the ladies that came on and said in the 90s, how the parties were and how everything was going on. And Nora's right, that goes to the next, if you decide to pass it on to your next generation or family, they're going to inherit that.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Now, I have one last thing to mention.
Okay.
Is whenever I threw a party and I was going to get loud, I always invited the neighbors.
You
do a
can't
party?
invite neighbors to somebody else's
Right?
wedding.
You do a party, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Have the problems with BCTV been resolved? I don't think Brian can hear us.
I think they're rebooting.
Well, imagine not saying do nada.
See some head scratching. Okay.
Okay. If we continue this for another month, we want more information about the noise level. And when you provide that information, you should be prepared to tell us how it was obtained.
Okay.
We need to see some kind of parking agreement with St. Michael's.
Okay.
We need to have some more information about how you're going to reach how you're going to determine capacity levels. And we need more information on if you have plans for events that are not related to guests at the inn. We need to have more details about that. Anybody have anything else to add? Okay, so is there a motion to continue to, I can't even remember when the next meeting is. September, what's the third Wednesday in September?
I don't know, the calendar in front of me.
It's the 15th.
The 15th, okay. Is there a motion to continue to the 15th? And at that point, we'll consider this additional information.
I make a motion that we continue to September the 15th with the conditions that were mentioned to be addressed.
So
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, I will call the vote again. Nora.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, so if you have any questions between now and September 15th, Paul, you should talk to Brian.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your thoughts on this and your help with this. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
I second.
I'll second that one, yeah.
Okay. Is there, I don't think there's any need for any discussion. Everybody in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. It's been a very long one.
Stay cool. Crank
Good
up
night.
those air conditioners.